Balance. Balance. When it comes to something like balance, I think of something like this: balancing between good and evil, balancing between just pretty much. When I think of something like balance, I usually think of something like, I don't know, something that is deemed more. How do I explain this? Look, the point is balance. Balance can be for like anything, whether it's for, you know, balance for like whatever's going on in the world out there, or balance as a meaning of something like video games. Balance is a thing. And when it comes to something like video games, balance applies in a different way. Mainly something to do with trying to make a certain weapon in a game or a certain character in a game not be overpowered or broken. Because when something is too unbalanced, it will definitely make things not fun for everyone involved. But while balance can work in games, there are certain games that can never be balanced and will never be balanced. Asymmetrical horror games. Now, what are asymmetrical horror games, you guys probably are asking? Asymmetrical horror games are basically where there's one extremely powerful player against multiple weak players. And the weak players have to work together as a team to beat the so-called power role. And the power role is the most overpowered player in the game, while the others are the weaker roles and they have to work together to defeat the power role. If the power role so happen to go against a really good team, they are going to be defeated no matter what, of course, if they're going against a really good team. Those rules applies for pretty much every single asymmetrical horror game. However, there is one thing that no game can ever be successful with: balancing. Let me explain. Asymmetrical horror games are completely different compared to like your average like first person shooters, your average like PvE games, something like that. Like, the biggest issue with asymmetrical horror games is, of course, balancing, because it's mainly due to both sides being different. You got the power roll side that wants to be overpowered so they can just win matches easily, and you got the other role, mainly just survivor sides and such, that really want the power roll to be nerfed into the ground so they can have an easier game and have easier times. When you have both sides just pretty much hating and competing against each other, there's just bound to be problems. And this problem started off with, well, let's face it, Dead by Daylight. But ever since then, now this problem is spreading to something like Roblox asymmetrical horror games, for example. And there's two ways that developers can handle said dispute. One, completely ignore the problems and risk your game getting completely killed off, because eventually people are going to stop playing them. Or you actually listen to the complaints and you do balance changes, whether to make things better or to make things worse. And it's a mix between both. People like these changes, and then there are people that really hate these changes. You can't please everybody. And it's not just asymmetrical horror games, it's multiplayer online games in general. You cannot please everyone when designing a multiplayer game. That's just not how it works. Like, you either are gonna, like, you'll make like half of the people happy and you'll make the other half extremely unhappy. You cannot please everyone, and that's just the unfortunate truth with multiplayer games in general. In asymmetrical horror games, it's just another victim to that. But yeah, balancing. We gotta get back to balancing. So, what is a true balanced asymmetrical horror game? None. Absolutely none. There's really no such thing as a balanced asymmetrical horror game. Because let's face it, no matter what developers do to actually try to quote unquote balance their asymmetrical horror game, There is people that will always find ways to complain and bitch about said thing that doesn't feel healthy for the game. Therefore, the devs have no choice but to listen, because God forbid they don't, it will definitely risk their game being dying. Now, there are some Roblox devs out there that actually don't give a fuck if the game is unbalanced or not, and will just leave their game as is, which will pretty much risk your game dying. An example of this is MRT, the creator of a pretty well-known asymmetrical horror game at the time, Dimensional Collections, a game that plays like Sonic.exe Disaster. Now, I love Dimensional Collections. It's a really, really amazing game. However, just like any other asymmetrical horror game, it falls to the same path, balancing issues. There was a point in time where MRT actually tried to balance the game, but no matter what he did, people bitched, 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 and bitched. Eventually, MRT got really pissed about it. Yes, MRT actually got angry because he was getting sick of constant complaints about balancing. So he just completely gave up on trying to balance the game and focused on doing the bigger update. The bigger update for, a bigger update, obviously. And basically, MRT just said, okay, basically, MRT just basically told us he is done trying to balance the game. He is going to focus on what he should focus on about the big update. And of course, his own life. Because these developers have a fucking life outside of just developing a goddamn video game. Especially if it's a goddamn Roblox game of all things, you know? It's fucking Roblox. Get over it. Um, now, MRT, while his decision making is obvious choice and not necessarily a bad one, because he doesn't bother to do balance changes as much now, because again, he's pretty much, you know, he just doesn't care about the balance, because, like, let's be honest, no character in any ASIM really needs any balance changes whatsoever. Like, let's be honest with ourselves here. Again, there's no such thing as a balanced ASIM game. It's impossible. And of course, MRG made a good decision to actually not catering to these fucking crybabies and actually keeping his game the way it is. However, it did come to a cost. I think people stopped playing the game eventually. It's probably not because of boredom, it's probably because of balancing. And because of that, people no longer have fun in the game, therefore they stop playing the game. Or that, or maybe because they just lost interest in the game, which that's also another thing. People just lose interest in games. But people also will stop playing games because of balancing, which again is a big issue to asymmetrical horror games in general. Like, let's be honest, you can't balance an ASIM. It's just impossible. And I'm going to explain 3 reasons to why you cannot balance an asymmetrical horror game. The first reason is that, one, it will just make asymmetrical horror games boring. When you try to balance a quote unquote asymmetrical horror game, not only will it just make the game straight up boring as fuck, but it also make the game just borderline not fun. Because when you're balancing too much stuff, it takes the fun away from certain aspects of said asymmetrical horror game. Like, for example, there's a fun killer. There's a really fun survivor that people really enjoy playing as. And when you do too much balancing towards them, it just makes the character not fun to use anymore, because they've been nerfed to the fucking ground to the point it's just not fun to play as them anymore. And that's the thing. It will just make the game boring. Now, the second reason is why you cannot balance an asymmetrical horror game is that roster. Excuse me. There is a thing called a roster. There's a roster of killers and a roster of survivors. You cannot balance either of those things, because even if you try to, like, balance a certain killer or a certain survivor, there are killers or survivors that will just be better than the other. Like, there'll be one killer that is pretty strong. Eventually, that said strong killer will get nerfed to the point they're not that good anymore. So, what do you think is going to happen? People are going to end up switching to a different character entirely and playing them instead of the character they used to play as because that one character is just significantly better than the character they used to play as now. You get what I mean? When you keep nerfing certain characters, people are not going to enjoy playing as them now, and they're going to switch to playing as the character that is just better than the other character. There are just killers and survivors that are just significantly better than the others. Which, again, even if all of these said characters are all strong together in their own ways, there are still characters that will just be better than the others. Now for my third reasoning. You can't please everyone. No matter what developers try to do to balance their game or to make their game feel fair to please everyone, you're not going to please everyone. It's impossible. You got the casual players that just cannot be pleased because there's either something they don't like that's in the game, or you cannot please the more competitive players because they like winning. And when you nerf something that they use a lot to win, they're gonna be pissed. You can't please both player bases. You can't please the casual players that just want to play the game and have fun, and not deal with, you know, things being overpowered or anything. And you cannot please the competitive side of the player base because they will use said overpowered thing or just strong thing in general to win. And when that strong thing gets nerfed, they're gonna be pissed, and they have to find something else to use to win. It's an infinite cycle of just nonstop, like, not being able to please everyone. It's an infinite cycle of nobody being happy. And it does make things get worse. Either people will just all out stop playing the game entirely, or even worse, people will actually go out of their way to harass people, which is awful. Like, yes, I'm not kidding. People will go out of their way to harass developers and such because they hate how they balance things. Like, it's just how it is. And I'm not saying all this to be a bad person. I'm just telling the truth. I know I'm right because that's just how it is. I played a good amount of asymmetrical horror games. Eventually, I came to a conclusion that none of these ASIMs will ever be balanced. These asymmetrical horror games will never be balanced. And it's simply because of the reasons I just simply explained in this video. And I have a friend who is a really competitive player. Like, I have a friend, which I'm pretty sure you know who he is if you watch my streams. I don't think I need to explain who that is, but like, he's really competitive in most of these ASINs, specifically in Roblox games. Like, the moment he loses in any game, he will flip his switch. He's so competitive that he does not like losing. He likes winning only. If he ever lose one game, or God forbid, like multiple matches, like he is the type of competitive player that would just straight up rage quit if he just loses one game or so. Okay, not one game. That's a little too overkill. But like if he loses too much, that'll be enough for him to just straight up stop playing the game. Not forever. Like he'll come play the game eventually. But like take a break from the game, for example. Now, with me, however, there's a point in time where I like winning too, but there's a point when you focus too much on winning more than you focus on having fun. When you focus more on winning in an asymmetrical horror game than actually having fun in a game, you're not gonna have fun with the game at all. You're just gonna not have fun at all. That's just how it is. That's kind of why I'm trying to consider like having fun with more of the. That's why I'm considering just having fun with the game instead of like sweating my ass off 24/7 or be competitive. Yes, I'll still play like a sweat, but I'm gonna play like a sweat in a more fun way and not like, the way that will make me upset. Because God forbid I play the game to try to win. Yes, I'm not gonna have fun, and therefore it's just gonna make me not play the game as much. But when I actually play the fucking game and actually just have fun with the fucking game and just turn my fucking brain off and just have fun and not think about anything else, then I can actually have fun with the fucking game and not worry, you know? Look, the point is, asymmetrical horror games cannot be balanced. It's impossible. There's no such thing as a balanced asymmetrical horror game. There's no such thing as a perfect Asymm. Asymm are pretty much unbalanced games in general. They're always going to be unbalanced, and you can't really, developers cannot really do anything to fix that. It's always going to be an unbalanced mess in some way or shape or form. That's just the unfortunate truth. And the problem is, most majority of the player base cannot accept that. They want something to be easy for them, which in that case is entitlement. A lot of these players are just entitled. Way too entitled in the worst way imaginable, in my opinion. And therefore, it will cause the game to suffer through balance changes, whether it's for the best or worse. Again, there are some developers that don't give a shit about pleasing their player base with balancing. Because let's be honest, why would they? Why should they waste their time trying to balance a fucking game that, God forbid, they know for a fact that they cannot balance when they can just focusing on what they want to focus on, the big updates. But yeah, that's just really all I gotta say about. That's just it, really. That's all I really gotta say about this video. In conclusion, asymmetrical horror games are impossible to balance, and they will never be balanced, and they were never meant to be balanced. And I'm gonna be clear about this. That is not a bad thing. See, you may not like how the game is unbalanced, but there is one important thing that you can do to actually do good in those games. Adapt. Adapt to what you learn from your mistakes, learn from what you saw and how you can improve on playing those games. Just simply adapt to certain things that happen, adapt to changes, adapt to how the game is. Eventually you will get good at the game. It's a long learning process, and it wouldn't hurt to even try. If you cannot adapt to an Asymm game because you don't like how it is, then I just got unfortunate news for you. The best way is to just not play the game. If there's a game that I don't like, I just don't play it. Mental health is more important than just focusing on the issues for a video game. I know it's off topic, but I just feel like I need to say something. Anyways, I'm Boo Cyber Studios. That's all I gotta say. Peace out, everyone.